All right, let's set the scene. Imagine it's 2006. You are the biggest mobile phone maker on the entire planet, and your job is to make over 300 million phones a year, and they all have to be pretty much perfect. That was the reality for Nokia. So how on earth did they do it? Well, the answer wasn't some single giant breakthrough. It was actually thousands of tiny little steps, all driven by this really powerful philosophy of making small, continuous improvements. Let's dig into how it all works.
Okay, first, to really get a handle on the insane pressure Nokia was under, we gotta go back to the mid-2000s. I mean, this was the golden age of the feature phone, right? When your polyphonic ringtone was basically your personal theme song. Demand was just exploding, and Nokia was king of the hill. But with all that power came this absolutely enormous manufacturing responsibility.
The world's appetite for mobile phones back then was, well, it was staggering. We're talking about a market approaching 1 billion units sold every single year. 1 billion. Just try to wrap your head around that number of components, of assembly lines, of logistical challenges. The stakes for getting it right weren't just high. They were, completely off the charts.
And out of that massive billion-unit market, who was sitting right at the top? You guessed it, Nokia. They were holding down about a third of it. That's over 300 million individual chances every year for something to go wrong. A tiny component gets misplaced, there's a software mismatch, a little defect. I mean, maintaining quality at that scale is one of the biggest challenges you can face in manufacturing. So, how'd they tackle it?
Well, they turned to a Japanese business philosophy, one that kind of flips the whole idea of massive top-down change right on its head. It's a concept called Kaizen, and it became the absolute key to their quality control.
So what is Kaizen exactly? Well, at its heart, it's all about making things better through these continuous, small, incremental changes. But, and this is the real game changer, these improvements aren't being handed down from some corporate boardroom. Nope. They come from the people actually doing the work, right there on the factory floor. It's about empowering every single person to be a problem solver.
And look, this wasn't just some abstract idea on a poster in the break room. Let's take a trip to Nokia's massive factory in Chennai, India, to see this whole philosophy in action. This is where the theory really hits the ground.
Okay, now this is where it gets really incredible. Just look at these numbers. The Chennai factory had about 3,500 workers. In just 1 year, those workers submitted 1,800 Kaizen ideas. That's 1,800 suggestions for how to do their jobs better, or safer, or more efficiently. That is a mind-blowing level of innovation coming directly from the ground up.
And we're not talking about vague suggestions here. These were brilliant, super practical solutions. For example, some workers created what's called a Poka-yoke device. It's this clever little mistake-proofing tool that made it physically impossible to assemble a circuit board the wrong way. Another team came up with a simple, ingenious wheel that helped workers instantly match the right language keypad to the right phone software, which got rid of a really common error. It just brilliantly shows the power of Kaizen, simple, clever ideas that solve very real problems.
So you've got all these small, smart ideas. That's great, but how do they actually add up to solve a 300 million unit problem? Well, this is where you get to see the magic of compounding in action.
Jukka Lehtela, who was Nokia's director of India operations back then, he just summed it up perfectly. He said, Kaizen is all about incremental improvement. So the changes might seem small, but make a world of difference in the long run. I mean, think of it like a snowball rolling downhill. You take those 1,800 improvement ideas, each one is like a tiny snowflake, right? But as you multiply their effect, saving a few seconds here, preventing one tiny error there, across 300 million devices, that snowball turns into an avalanche of quality. All of a sudden, those small changes prevent millions of defects and save just countless hours of work. So what's the big lesson here? What's the takeaway? Because this story is about way more than just building phones. It's really a powerful lesson about how we can tackle huge challenges in our own work, and even in our own lives. This right here is the heart of it. We so often think that to get these huge, monumental results, we need some revolutionary, earth-shattering breakthrough. But the lesson from Nokia's factory floor is that extraordinary outcomes can absolutely come from consistently taking small, smart steps day in and day out. And that really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. In your own work, or your studies, or whatever personal projects you've got going on, what's one small improvement you can make today that over time